Welcome to episode 34 of the Total Hockey Training Podcast. I'm your host, Sean Scahan, and just want to remind everybody, Total Hockey Training, we're in our in-season phase. That is my online training platform. You can get that at trainheroic.com. My next guest is my good friend, Seth Munsey. Seth is the Director of Health and Sports Performance of the Disc Golf Pro Tour. He's been a sports performance coach since 2007, and he's owned his own gym for 4 years. Seth, it's great to see you, pal. Welcome to the Total Hockey Training Podcast.
Oh, thanks for having me on, Sean. It's such an honor, pleasure to be on here with you. I'm sure we'll get into it about our roots of me, interning for you and all that. But it just to kind of, to many years later come back and talk through a lot of the stuff that you helped, on my end, spawn some of my, a lot of my philosophies and everything, and what I do in the sport of disc golf. And it's been a great journey, and I'm looking forward to talking to you about it.
That's great, man. I appreciate that. And so let's get into it. Tell us about your background. Where'd you grow up and how'd you get into sports performance?
Yeah, so I grew up in Southern California, Orange County, South Orange County. A great place to be. I know you. I saw you interviewed Brandon Bovey, who was also an intern at the same time as myself. We had a lot of fun together working for you, and I know he's from that area. And I don't live there now. I live in Boise, Idaho, but all my family lives there, and I love going back to visit. So yeah, that's where I grew up. And I didn't when I graduated high school, I had no idea I was going to work in sports. I was in high school and in my youth, really, I was a surfer, snowboarder, skateboarder. I didn't really play a lot of team sports. I loved watching them, but I didn't play them. Um, after I got out of high school, I joined the military, and I did search and rescue and law enforcement in the Coast Guard for 4 years. Got off that, started working in the fire department, ambulance, spent time in Laguna Beach down there. Not a bad place to be, Laguna Beach,
No.
Dana Point. Spent about 6 years working on the ambulance for the Orange County Fire Authority as a reserve firefighter. So that's where I was. That's where I was headed in that direction. Always in a helping profession, whether it's with athletes or responding to medical aids and stuff. And I decided after many years working on the ambulance and gaining a lot of weight and a lot of stress and all that, I thought, you know what, I think I need to do something else. I think I need to pursue another career path. And I got in shape and started working at a gym down there in the area. And one of the trainers just so happened to he took me under his wing, and I was a brand new trainer. I had my one certification that I at that point, and he said, "Hey, there's a couple things I'd love to teach you." And he handed me athletic body and balance, and handed me Mike Boyle's first book,
Mhm.
and that got me started going down a path of well, instead of hey, I'm going to just train general population, which is great, but that path of starting to learn from Gray Cook and Mike Boyle and others, and then I started going to perform betters, and then it just started steamrolling where I just couldn't consume enough information. I was spending my days on strengthcoach.com, strength coach forums, strengthcoach.com forums, and all that, and that's really where my education went. I ended up going to Cal State Fullerton, graduated there, kinesiology degree. I heard Brandon did that as well. A great place to be, great place to learn from, and also that is what led me to also crossing paths with you,
Mhm.
and then where it went from there. So I guess to just touch on that briefly, uh, I met you at a conference, Perform Better conference. I think it was an event for a charity event for Coach Dose
Yes.
that we
Yes.
that we
Okay.
met at.
The pub
Yeah,
crawl, right?
I sat next to you at the pub crawl, and I remember this that I've always been one to search for opportunities to grow. And I had gone down to San Diego to do a kettlebell to be a victim at the RKC in San
Okay.
Diego. And I still remember I'd gone and done. I drove up to Coach Dose's thing that year. I was a student. I was, had a full time job and a full time student, wife, and a mortgage. But I was 30 years old. But I was always still just searching for new opportunities for growth. And uh, went down to San Diego, and I did that. Did that victim was a victim for it. And then I remember I was up at the pub crawl and just happened to sit next to you. No idea. And we started talking. I think you heard me talking about going down to San Diego, and you're like, "Why did you go down there for that?" I'm like, "Well, I go down there for every opportunity to learn." And you're like, "What?" And then yeah, that's kind of where it took off from there. Is we just started talking, and I had the great opportunity to learn under you, and that really just accelerated my growth. And now to top it all off, I, I I owned a gym for a couple of years. Now I work in the sport of disc golf, professional disc golf. I have a company called Disc Golf Strong that I started in 2016, which is really focused on amateur disc golf athletes. And then I work for the Disc Golf Pro Tour as the director. I'm the director of safety and sports, health, safety, and sports performance, and also a security director. So I kind of tap into both my military, ambulance, fire background on safety and security, and then I wear the hat of sports performance with that
Okay.
background. So we travel, and it's a long tour, and I'm sure we'll touch on all that. But that's a little bit of the origin story to hear.
Wow. Well, that is awesome. A couple questions based on that.
Yeah.
So, when you said you were a victim at that RKC,
Mm-hmm.
is that the same course that I would have taken in San Diego, the 3 day kettlebell
Yeah,
course,
that was
RKC
your
level one?
course. Yeah, that was the
Sweet.
course you went to because that was one of the sparks of our conversation at the pub crawl because I remember you're like, why did you? That was my RKC, and I was like, yeah, I just drove down there to take a 1 hour lesson. Why not?
So what were the
And
victims again? I don't recall that. Like I thought
yeah,
I was a victim because I was, doing probably 5,000 swings
oh, you
3 day
you were
period,
definitely yeah, you're definitely a victim,
right?
and yeah, and I loved my RKC experience that you helped kind of push me in that direction. But the victim was they would put out an email to people that followed them and said, "Hey, our instructors in training need to train somebody on Sunday." And so in the whole Pavel
Yes,
the
got it. I
Pavel
remember
way, he
that.
called them
Yep.
victims, right? So it's like, come down and be a victim and learn, and get a coaching lesson from an instructor in training.
I'll just say this, like I was very fortunate that weekend. Part of me was like, are you shitting me? Like I'm not doing I didn't sign up for a boot camp. Like as
Yeah,
you had these kind of pods of people with these specialized coaches.
sure.
And it was hot. I remember Pavel himself telling me, Sean, you need to wear sunscreen.
Mm.
And it was that hot and sunny.
Yep.
And I was very fortunate that Dan John was the coach of I guess, my cohort. And
Yeah,
it, and I remember, he was just unbelievable communicator and presenter and a great guy. And I remember like
absolutely.
we were doing, I guess you'd call it naked get-ups
Hmm.
where you don't hold a kettlebell in your hand and we're just demonstrating our naked get-ups and
Yep.
in the only shaded part of the park. I look over and these other poor people are doing swings for, being late for, getting a drink of water. And I'm like,
Yep.
I was very fortunate because I think I'm still a big paddle fan. Um, and I believe in how they teach the kettlebell exercises, and I think it helps you use those cues and coaching into a team environment. And
Yeah.
I'm a big Dan John fan, and if I didn't have Dan John, I might have had a different outlook on that weekend as a whole, if that makes sense.
Oh no, that absolutely makes sense. I would feel the same way. Because yeah, the boot camp. I mean, I already did the boot camp in the
Oh
military. I
yeah,
already did
right,
all the
right, right.
yelling and the screaming and all that. So it's like it doesn't really phase me in the sense of that I've done the hard stuff before. So uh, learning from Dan, I mean, what an unbelievable experience you had, and I had a very similar experience in the sense that well, Brett Jones ran my RKC, but I got to spend a lot of time with Dan and stayed up at his house, and I remember training for the RKC, and I had walked up to him, and we were friends at this time, but I walked up to him at the Perform Better Summit in Long Beach one time, and I said, "Hey Dan, I got my RKC in a couple of weeks. Any wisdom you want to, you'd be able to share." And it was just starting lunchtime. And he's like, "Hold on," and he like goes and gets a sandwich, and then he sits down and he starts eating the sandwich. He's like, "All right, grab that bell and do 100 snatches right now." And I just sitting there, and people are walking by. It's lunchtime, and Dan's just sitting on the ground eating a sandwich, and I'm just
Yeah,
repping out snatches in front of
that's
him.
awesome.
And then he gave me a few pointers. I mean, Dan has influenced so many of us in so many ways, but like you said, just the way he approaches things, I
Yeah,
think is
yeah,
it's helpful for all.
yeah. Brett Jones was at that RKC as well.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
got to know Brett a little bit through further down the line with the CKFMS course, which
Yeah,
I don't think they still have that anymore. That was an
yeah, I'm not sure.
unbelievable course that I took actually here in Minnesota while working for the
Yeah.
Bucks, and that was a great course. But yeah, that's great stuff, and that's fun. And so, talk to me then about how before I talk about disc golf, I
Hmm.
just want to say, like, for any listeners out there um who are disc golf people, athletes. When I ask Seth questions, I'm not asking from a kind of a condescending tone. Like I want the listeners to know, like I really want to know more because I really
Hmm.
don't know much about disc golf. And I'll get
Yeah.
into how I learn more about it. But tell me about disc golf and how you got into that, because I'd love to hear that story.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was living up in Monterey, California. This was after my time with you down in SoCal. I owned a gym, like I was saying, for a couple of years, and it's called Iron Republic. It's based around
Yeah,
kettlebells and
I remember that.
sandbags and all that. And so um, during that time, I started playing a lot of disc golf in the area. There was a lot of disc golfers, some really great disc golf courses. And I grew up on the beaches of Southern California, throwing a frisbee with my brothers and my friends. And I mean, every day it felt like I was throwing a disc at some point, throwing a frisbee. So it just, the flight of a disc was not something new to me at that point. So I started playing disc golf all the time. And I recognized that there was a lot of the people I were playing with, they were suffering from injuries. They were not performing as well as they wanted to while they were playing. And these were just recreational players. Um, and no one was warming up. No one was nothing. So I thought, well, I've got my background. I worked in hockey, rotational sport. There's a lot of experience and value that I think I can bring to the disc golf community. So I did some research and I looked up online and found that there was about 8 to 12 million disc golfers around the world, and that there was nobody talking about athletic performance, nobody talking about warming up, rehab, nothing at all. So I thought, hey, maybe they would see value in me sharing some stuff about injury prevention, and injury resiliency and stuff. So I in 2015, I came up with the idea to have a company called Disc Golf Strong. And at that time was the same time there was a professional tour, but it wasn't really organized. So there's a PDGA, which is like the PGA, the Professional Disc Golf Association. So they had professional events and there was professional players, but in 2016, the Disc Golf Pro Tour was formed to say, hey, here's an actual tour with a schedule and standings and championship points and all that. So that was the same year that I started Disc Golf Strong. So I started putting out content, and that pro players started seeing my stuff on Instagram and all that, and started reaching out to me saying, hey, we don't, there's nothing like this. Can you help us out? Can you take us through some things. And so that started to take off actually pretty quick at that point. So what I did is I ended up going out to Disc Golf Pro Tour events. And on my own dime, I would just travel out there and just be helpful. Hey, a couple of them had reached out to me. At that point, disc golf was good. Like, it was growing. It's been around since like the 70s, professional disc golf. But it was growing, but it was still small. So I would just travel and I would meet people and connect and try to be helpful and not intrusive or anything. Just little things. Hey, how about you need a warm up. Here's a little few exercises you can do right now. Hey, you got something going on with your shoulder. Let's just see what we can do. And that grew into me partnering eventually with the Disc Golf Pro Tour. So Disc Golf Strong partnered with the Disc Golf Pro Tour. And then in 2021, we were starting our year of partnership, and the CEO of the Disc Golf Pro Tour, we were having breakfast before the first event of the year, which we have a 9-month season. I'm sure I'll talk about that later. But he said, "Hey, have you ever interested in working for the Disc Golf Pro Tour? You can still have Disc Golf Strong, but we'd love to have you on board full time." So it's like, yeah, there was nobody doing it.
Hmm.
And so I was just kind of like making it as I go, and so I became the director of strength and conditioning, sports performance for the Disc Golf Pro Tour in 2021. I also chair the medical committee for the PDGA, and I'm also now the head coach of the Boise State University disc golf team. So it's gone in ways that I never expected, but you just show up and put in the work and things happen. And I guess to kind of just give your audience a little bit more insight into disc golf, our highest paid player who grew up in Huntington Beach, he signed a 10-year, $10 million contract like 3 or 4 years ago. And that's just one contract. So he has other sponsors and stuff. So we have multiple 7-figure athletes. We have a lot of 6-figure athletes, mid to high 6-figure athletes, and then on tour. And then we have, athletes that are making around 100,000, maybe up or down a little bit, which is good to play professional disc golf. And they travel the country and go overseas, go to Europe for about 5-6 weeks. So yeah,
Wow. Well, first of all, that's an unbelievable story because it sounds like you followed your passion
yeah,
to what's that? If you don't work a day in your life if you follow your passion and live what
yeah.
you want to do. And that's unbelievable with 10 years, $10 million contract.
Yeah, Paul Macbeth. He's had a 10-year, $10 million contract. I think it was like 2021 or 2022. And then since then, again, yeah, we've had multiple other 7-figure and high
Okay.
6-figure. So it's it's lucrative. Like it's there. We're getting more athletes coming from other sports now. Like our championship, like other sports, winning an event is probably not going to be like, it's a good chunk of change, but it's not going to be as much as you're going to get from your sponsors over the year, right? So like this year, our the male and female player MPO, which is men's mixed pro open, and FPO, which is a protected division, FPO female pro open, they'll both make 30 grand for winning that tournament that weekend. So
Wow.
we got an 18-year-old, or he just turned 19, and he won this past weekend in Michigan, and I think he surpassed like $125,000 in earnings for this year just from winning, not from his contract. So we're
Wow.
getting more athletes that are saying, "Hey, I
Yeah.
could do this, and maybe I have a path to this other sport, but there's definitely a path to making good money and a life for myself in disc golf."
Now this might be a dumbass question, but
Yeah,
where does the revenue come from? For example, in that $10 million contract, is
yeah,
it it does that make sense? Like where does
yeah,
that
absolutely.
someone
Yeah, and for the listeners, you're not going to be able to see this, so you're going to have to go to Sean's YouTube channel to see this. But some of the things here is a lot of the money is in the plastic. Like we have a player on tour, Brody Smith, and he's a very famous ultimate frisbee player. He started playing professional disc golf a few years ago, but he was one of the top ultimate players in the world. And talking to him, he's like, "Hey, you got one, you get one frisbee, one ultimate frisbee, and that's all you need on the out there to play." But in disc golf, these discs. I mean, an average player will have between 20-25 discs, and these discs can get I mean, there you have putters, you have mid ranges, you have drivers. This is a disc golf pro tour one. You have different types of plastic because it's like clubs in your golf bag. I mean, you need them for different situations. So what they'll do is, like, say Paul Macbeth, his sponsor who sells Discraft, they will take discs and they will stamp them with Paul Macbeth, all different types of Paul Macbeth, stamps, special stamps on different discs, different plastics, different weights. People
Wow.
will buy them. I mean,
Yeah.
there's people that have 5,000 discs at home. They're collectors, So that is one thing that makes our sport very lucrative with that is that you can, sell plastic with people's
Wow.
names, faces, their special logos, whatever you want, and they're 20, $25, $15. So yeah.
Wow. That gets into my next story then, because I was in Pittsburgh about a year ago now, and
Mm-hmm.
I took an Uber to the airport, and the guy was in his trunk and he had a bag full of what I thought were colored frisbees.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, what do you got going there? I'm like, is that disc golf? He's like, yeah. That's when I learned about what you just talked about,
Mm-hmm.
the different discs for the different distances.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, holy shit. And so that's when I was like, yeah, and this is like I was just like, yeah, my old assistant, I think he's into doing strength and conditioning for disc golf. He's like, oh, what's his name? I'm like, Seth Munsey. He goes, you know Seth Munsey? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, oh my God. Like it's a small community,
Yeah.
and it's pretty cool because on this drive, this guy was pulled up a video and he showed me the winning shot on a championship
Yeah.
round.
Yeah.
And I was like, holy shit, he just really did that. It was, I don't know, I could be wrong.
Yeah.
It was about a 200-yard
Yep. The
shot
holy shot. James Conrad.
across the water.
Mm.
And it was pretty cool because I'm like, that's a really cool thing because you see some of these, if people don't know, if you're at a golf course, you might see these chains, like that's a disc
Yep.
golf course. And I think that's
Yep.
really cool. And so I thought that was interesting. And so I'm grateful that you're sharing the process. And so tell me now, what kind of injuries do you see? Like what are there overuse injuries? Are there um
Yeah.
obviously you don't have any contact injuries, but what do you see from an injury
Yeah.
prevention standpoint?
Yeah, for sure. So something I've been saying from the very start, many, many years now, is the best thing about disc golf is you can play every day, and the worst thing about disc golf is you can play every day. Players will go out there, amateur and pro, and they will sometimes play 5, 6, 7 days a week. And you're throwing hard. I mean, the professionals, they can throw. I mean, they can if they want to. If it's like a long drive competition, I mean, they're throwing 700 feet or more, off the tee. But typically 400 or 500 feet. Amateur 250 to 500 feet. And they're just it's play like golf. And so we have pitch and putt courses. Small. A lot of people will see like a little disc golf course in a park, and to them that's disc golf, and that is disc golf. But what the pros play are very big courses, very
Really?
demanding course. Yeah, it's like a pitch and putt executive level golf course and Augusta, right? Like
Okay.
there's a big difference in what the professionals are playing versus the average rec player. Now, all those courses, those big, huge courses, are open to recreational players. So, if you live near one, there's a lot of those courses are played by recs, but they're just really tough. So, the fact that you can play every day And the fact that you're just putting rep after rep after rep, and there's like no pitch count. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
like
Mhm.
throwing hard. I say that, the number one injury in disc golf is the overuse injury. It can show up in your lower back, your hip, your knee, your elbow, your neck. It's going to show up in a lot of different ways. Now, in the amateur disc golfer, it's, we know, I mean, you and I probably sit at a desk a lot more than we want to, but there's a lot of
Yeah.
people that sit at desks all day. And so they've got no they've got no thoracic extension. They've got poor thoracic rotation. They got no hip internal or low in hip internal external rotation, all that. Very, you know, their core stability needs a lot of work. But yet they're going out there and they're grabbing a bag and they're playing 18 holes or more sometimes every day with their buddies or by themselves, and they're just ripping it as hard as they can. Um, and then our pros, I mean, they're practicing sometimes multiple times a day for these tournaments, and these tournaments are 3 to 4 days, and they're throwing high level, just high energy, high force, high torque on their elbow, their shoulder. So, uh, a University of Arizona study, I think it was back in like 2016 ish, did a survey of over 800 disc golfers and found about an 82% injury in the sport. So, yeah,
Wow.
I work with a lot of players, both on the pro and the amateur side. Where on the amateur side, I've got people, you know, reaching out to me. Hey, I just started playing disc golf 6 months ago. I play every day. Now I can't pour my cup of coffee. I can't pick up my kid. I can't turn my door knob right. And it's the fact is, it's not that disc golf is unhealthy, but just like every sport, sports aren't healthy. Sports are
Right.
performance. Right?
It's a different movement pattern.
Yeah, so it's just giving them. It's been a big goal of mine, for all these years is changing the culture in our sport, from hey, get out of the car, drink some coffee, throw a few putts, and then throw hard off T1. It's no, like, engage in a warm up, work on your mobility, work on improving the stability in your joints, work on improving core stability and handling rotational torque, and and making it simple for them, though, because a lot of them, a lot of like an amateur uh, disc golfer, they haven't really, many of them haven't played sports,
Right.
uh, so they don't have the athletic training background of working with a coach like you or me at any level. And so, they're just going to get out there and throw.
That's interesting. So tell me, what do you, when you're watching these events, what do you see in the pro versus the amateur, for example? Like what kind of differences do you see?
Well, what I see, some of the similarities I see, which I wish I didn't see, but I just expect to see, is that the pro not only has better technique, their form is just more in tune. They just got more reps in, good reps, um, and but also they can handle the stresses, and because they have good technique, they can handle the stresses easier, and they can handle all the different variability. There's so much variability in our
Wow.
sport. I mean, you're throwing sometimes from a knee. Sometimes you got to throw this big shot overhead over these trees. Sometimes you got to throw a forehand or sidearm, we call it, through these trees. I mean, there's so much variability in
Hmm.
angles and stress loads and all that. The amateur disc golfer tries to do that same exact thing.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, I always say it's like something I tell people in our sport. I'm like, that's like me watching like Mariano Rivera throw a fastball one day and be like, I should try doing that. And
Yeah.
then just picking him a ball and throwing as hard as I can, just right.
Yeah.
And that's in our sport. And it's just that's just how it is that we get disc golfers, they fall in love with the sport for so many reasons. There's so many reasons that people enjoy the sport of disc golf. And then they're like, I'm going to play every day and I don't want to suck. And I'm watching these pros throw. And so I'm therefore going to throw as hard as I can.
Right.
I'm going to put as much effort and energy into this throw. Their body is not ready for it. And
Hmm.
so that's part of what I try to do is just help, show them like, you gotta work your way up. You gotta, start from the bottom, build that strong foundation and work your way up.
That's great. That's unbelievable. That's awesome. And remember this story, which I thought was really neat, as I worked in the NHL a long time, and a lot of time you'd have a lot of downtime, not a lot of
Mm-hmm.
downtime, but you would have your off days on the road sometimes. And this Uber driver was telling me about a former Penguins goalie who
Mm-hmm.
would find the nearest disc golf course on the road and play. Is
Mm-hmm.
there any familiarity with that at all?
Oh
Like
yeah, yeah.
who that
Casey
person
DeSmith.
is? Casey
Yep, Casey
DeSmith?
DeSmith. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I think he's the goalie of the Canucks now. Um, yeah, so he was goalie with the Penguins, and he's actually sponsored by a disc golf manufacturer.
No shit.
Um, yep. And so he's a part of their ambassador team, pro ambassador team, um, and that's what's really cool about our one thing that's really cool about our sport is we actually have quite a number of celebrities, pro athletes, all that play disc golf all the time. So like we have like from comedians, Bert Kreischer, to UFC fighters to MLB players, all that because it's a way for them to blow off steam. It's a way for them to get out in nature and still be athletic and still be competitive if they want to. And they can play by themselves. They can play with some friends like Casey does. I do too. Like we, take discs wherever I go, and you can just look online and there's apps and there's sites for this where you find every local course near you, and you're like, hey, I'm gonna just go play 9 holes. I've been driving all day. I'm gonna get out and then go play 9 holes, 3 holes, 2 holes. Unlike golf, most of it is not tee times or anything. So you just
Yeah,
show up, start playing,
it's
and
awesome.
that's what's really cool. Like we've done a couple celebrity events, pro am events with the disc golf pro tour, um, because it's a sport that it's multi generational. I could go out with grandparents, spouse, kids. We could all go out, different skill levels, everything. Still have fun. They're doing their thing. I'm doing my thing. We can enjoy it, or I can go out by myself. You can play at any age. We have junior world championships. We have seniors playing, people in their 80s and 90s playing. So it's a lifelong sport. I mean, it's very hard if you and I were like, hey, you want to go play football today?
Right, right.
Like that, or
Yeah,
hey, you and I go play hockey today. Like, not that you can't, but disc
yeah.
golf is definitely something where a lot of athletes are starting to push that way to say, hey, when I'm not on the ice or I'm not on the pitch or I'm not this and that, I'm gonna go play and blow off steam and enjoy myself playing disc golf.
That is awesome. That is great. So tell me quickly about your coaching position at Boise State.
Yeah, this is great. I mean, I love it. We have a very strong team. So I moved to Boise a year ago, just over a year ago. My wife and my 2 daughters and I, we lived on the road for a year and a half in an RV going around the country,
Wow.
following the disc golf pro tour because I travel full time for the sport. I still remember working with you at the Ducks and thinking, man, Sean travels so much. I mean, he is always gone. I don't know if I could handle uh, that workload. I don't
Yeah,
know if I could
I remember
handle.
you saying that. Like that's right.
Yeah.
And then what do you go and do? You buy an
Oh
RV and you
gosh.
go traveling.
Oh yeah. For like the last 7 years, I travel. Not. I mean, our season starts in February and then it ends in October. And there's a professional tournament almost every weekend. So I'd be on the road like full time. I'd be home for 4 weeks, gone so gone for 4 weeks, home for 2 days, gone for 6 weeks, home for 5 days with my family, gone back and forth. And so then, the was fortunate the tour was like, let's put you in an RV, you can be with your family for a little while. So we went to 42 states.
Wow.
And now being off the road this year more than ever before, I've had the opportunity where the Boise State team asked me if I would, join there and be their head coach, and it's such a fun position. We go to national championships in South Carolina in April, and we're a competitive team, and we're excited about the season ahead. And college disc golf is growing massively. I mean, so many, especially like there's some organization. I mean, there's some universities where it's now under athletics, and so it's like a scholarship. You can get a full
Wow.
scholarship ride at some, or in some places a partial scholarship ride. Us, it's still a club team, but that's our goal, is to show
Yeah.
Boise State like, hey, let's make this a scholarship. And so there's a lot of athletes, just like people who want to go, other athletes that play other sports that are looking at disc golf now. Um, we've got a lot of college kids. They're like, hey, like there is an opportunity. I could play on this disc golf team, go and compete, and then go and try to get my tour card for the disc golf pro tour and get 6 7 figure contracts. Like that is
There
a,
are athletes coming out of club disc golf teams doing it as a living now.
yeah, because a club team sport in disc golf, it's only a club team sport, not because you have high level play and high level competitors. It's because just it hasn't been recognized by,
Yeah.
the team, where a lot of other club team sports, it's like, people are like, hey, I'm doing this for enjoyment and for, staying active and competitiveness and stuff. But there's really low chance I'll ever go and play. I don't want to, I feel like if I say a sport, that I'm saying that it's not a real sport, or it's not, there's
Hmm.
not a pathway in it. But there's a lot of club team sports where it's like you
Yeah.
play it, and then afterwards you're like, yeah, I used to play that in college. Disc golf is something where college kids can be like, if I excel at this, I could go and I could play professionally.
Wow.
So
That is
so
awesome.
we meet every week, and put a lot of effort in there, and I'm really excited. We had 800 competitors at their last national championships this past year, and that's because that's where it was cut off at, as allowing 800 competitors. So there's a lot of growth potential there. And then, to be honest, overseas, we have a disc golf pro tour Europe, so we go overseas for a couple of weeks. And funny story here, Sean, is that I remember when you brought me on, and we had Temu there, Solani, we had Saku Koivu, we had Tony Ludman, we had
Yeah.
Niklas. So we had all these Finnish players, and that was the year that I think you guys played the Rangers in Helsinki. Was
Yeah.
it
We played the
was it
Rangers
the
in Sweden. I think it was
who'd you play in you?
Buffalo Sabres,
Okay,
maybe.
in Helsinki.
Yes. Hmm.
Yeah, and I still remember, I didn't go on that trip, but you guys came back, and I thought, I know nothing about Finland, and and I know nothing about Helsinki, and it'd be so interesting to go there one day, because of, I mean, Teemu and Saku and Tony, they were all such great guys, and and spend time with them in the weight room and stuff. And I remember, man, wonder what it would be like to go to Finland. Man, I've been to Finland like a bunch of times now. I think I've spent a total of over 2 months in Finland last
Really?
couple of years. Yeah, because Finland, there are more disc golf courses per capita in Finland than anywhere else in the world.
Wow.
So more courses here in the States, but more courses per capita in Finland. And
Yeah.
you go there, everyone wants to be a professional disc golfer. Like there's no counterculture, like, oh, the hippie sport back in the day, which the disc golf pro tour is more like golf than it is disc golf in the sense of, on the
Hmm.
disc golf pro tour, they're not doing all the stuff that people think about, because they're trying to make money. I mean, this is a
Sure.
professional sport, right? And so in Finland, I mean, the courses are beautiful. I've spent time in Helsinki and Tampere and all around Finland. In Estonia, we go to Tallinn, Estonia. We go to Sweden, Norway, Denmark, Croatia, so Czech Republic. So yeah, our European events are blowing up, and so now it's like I can find my way around Helsinki, and it's funny that I can say that, because I remember being with you, and I'm thinking,
Yeah.
and they're from Finland. I know nothing about that country. I have to
Well,
like
I thought
look into.
I thought I would never go there again myself, and I was just there this past May.
Okay, yeah,
for a hockey tournament. So yeah, that's
awesome.
pretty
I mean,
cool.
some of our greatest players in professional disc golf right now are from Finland, and they are popular players in Finland. Like they're popular celebrities in Finland, and like our number one female player in the world, she's from Estonia. I mean, she gets invited to presidential balls. She's she
Really?
is like she gets off the plane there, and there's cameras and news cameras in her face and everything. Like in Europe, disc golf is just exploding,
That's awesome.
exploding.
That
Yeah.
is crazy. And that is just, yeah, I'm grateful that you shared all that because
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know how big of an impact it was in the sporting world. So that's really cool. Really neat.
Yeah, I
Really neat.
and 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 I encourage everyone, to try it out. We have the Disc Golf Network, which is part of the Disc Golf Pro Tour, and I mean we have our own Disc Golf Network. Is people can watch all of our events, and I think that's gone a long way to help grow our sport too, and bring in new people wanting to try disc golf because they're like, wow, I can. This isn't just a YouTube thing or an ESPN Ocho, which we've been
Yeah.
on ESPN Ocho before. I'd love to be on ESPN Ocho, but again, but like they're like I can follow every tournament live. We have sports broadcasters in the booth. We have
Yeah.
field reporters. We have everything. So for the athletes that are listening to your which I'm sure every single one of them are athlete at some level. Give disc golf a try, even if it's just recreationally. It's a way to uh, stay active in the off season, or keep that competitive drive alive when and
Hmm.
you know all that stuff. And then from the strength coaches, I guess I would say is this: it's what I did in disc golf. If where I've gone, there's a lot of sports that really need somebody to guide them. And maybe in the beginning, there's not income in it, and there's not, you know, notoriety or whatever, and it's a lot of grind and it's a lot of push. But I feel like what I done in the sport of disc golf can be recreated in so many what would be once considered niche sports, but because of the rise of YouTube and this and that, I mean, there could be a professional ping pong coach. I don't know, like, and make good money and make a big impact around the world, helping with elbow injuries and shoulder injuries and this and that. Right? It's just taking that step and helping impact all those players, all those athletes around the world.
Well, that is unbelievable that because you know that from experience. And I think that is, yeah, hats off to you, Seth. So where can listeners find out more about you? I know you're on Instagram and Facebook. What are your handles there, bud?
Yep. So on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, it's Disc Golf Strong. And then I have my website, discgolfstrong.com. So those are my social media. I used to post all there a lot. I'm planning on posting a lot more, but also Disc Golf Pro Tour. I would say check that out as well if you're interested in the sport. That's dgpt.com, because that's where you're going to find a lot about learning about the sport and how you can get involved. So those are my handles, and yeah.
Great. That is awesome. Well, Seth, hey man, I love hearing that story and that fire in your belly to go out and do that. And it was just unbelievable catching up. And I'm proud of you. And thanks for coming on.
Thanks a lot, Sean. I really appreciate it. This was a lot of fun. Thanks to everyone that tunes in. And if you ever have any questions about disc golf or a niche sport, getting into it and how you can do it and what the ways, like, reach out to me.
Awesome.
Then that would just be Seth at discgolfstrong.com too.
Awesome. That is great. So listeners, yeah, if you reach out to him because he's been there and done that. So that is great. Well, thanks, Seth. I appreciate your time, man.
Yeah, thank you, Sean. Thanks for the strong foundation going into this sport. I'll always be appreciative for it.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too.